Hello, artist friends. It's Mrs. Heinzelman here for day 3 of printing. Today we are going to work on printing with markers. Yes, markers. So let's go over the supplies that you will need for today's work. You are going to need some aluminum foil. Doesn't matter what kind, just grab some foil. Of course, you need your messy mat. I like to have tape to hold my foil down. It keeps it from moving around while I'm working. In addition to those things, you're going to need some markers. You can use whatever kind you have. They can be skinny markers or thick markers or, doesn't really matter, but they cannot be permanent. So no Sharpies, cannot be permanent. After you have those things, you need paper, of course, but then you're also going to need some water. If you have a sponge and a little bowl of water, that would be great. I don't have a sponge, so I'm just using a little clean rag for my printing. So to get started, let's talk about this foil. I want you to take your hands and just feel it. It's so smooth. The texture is very smooth. When we paint and draw on paper, paper has a texture that is, it can be smooth, but it has what's called a tooth. And so it's not a tooth that eats, but it's called a tooth. So your paint or markers and things, they actually soak into your paper. But when we use markers on the foil is not going to let the ink soak in. So it's just going to stay on the surface. And then when we print, we're going to pull the ink off of the surface. So everybody grab your markers and we are going to start. I think let's start with the Roy G. Biv print. We're going to use these printed papers for something once we've done a whole bunch of different kinds of prints. So I'm just going to start laying down some color. Now, when you're putting your ink on your foil, you don't need to go all the way to the edge. Just kind of keep it in the middle section, okay? So I'm going to put down some red. And what color comes next? That is correct. Here comes the orange. Orange, and I'm just quickly laying color down. And remember, it's not soaking into the foil, it's resting on top. Here comes the yellow. So now I have R-O-Y. So next I need G. Let's put some green down. And now we need some B for blue. These are smelly markers and they smell really good. And then we're going to put our V down for violet. I don't have an indigo marker, so we're just going to Roy G. Biv without an I. So now I have all my ink on my foil. It's not soaking in. I'm going to slide this up just a smidge. Now I need to take a sheet of paper and get my rag. Now I want to get my paper wet so that it's shiny, but I don't want it so wet that it's drippy. So when you look at your paper, you should be able to hold it at an angle and see how my paper is shiny? Shiny is good. After it's shiny, take your rag and go back over it one more time to make sure it doesn't have any puddles. Okay, so now I'm going to take my wet paper and I am going to put it right on top of my markers. Now, the first day when we talked about printing, I told you that artists print a little differently than, say, a book person, bookmaker. So this is a tool that an artist uses called a brayer, and this part is made out of rubber. And you could put some ink on this and then you would roll the ink onto your printing plate. You could also use this, which has a wooden roller, and this one I wouldn't put ink on this, but I would roll my paper to make sure that it's picking up all the ink underneath it. If you don't have these tools, this is kind of like a rolling pin. It's just going to roll and put some pressure on your paper. You can also do the same thing with your hands. So I'm going to rub and smooth it down and make sure that I am getting all the spots of my paper massaged in. And now I'm ready to, it's called pull the print. So now I'm ready to lift up my paper and let's see what happened. Look at that. My ink from the foil pulled off onto my paper. This ink that's still here, I could use that again if I got another piece of paper wet. I have this little drawing of a heart, and I'm going to put it right there on top of those, and let's see if I can get that ink to pull. Yeah, sure, it makes like a tie-dye. So when you're finished with this print, just take a paper towel and wipe it off. If your ink is starting to dry, you can just get it your towel a little bit damp, and it'll wipe right off. You want to make sure that your foil is nice and dry before you put your ink on for your next print. So what if I wanted to do maybe all warm colors? So here's some red, and I'm just going to lay these on kind of crazy. And here's some orange. And I need one more warm color. What should I choose? What do you think? Yellow, correct. So there are my 3 warm colors, and I can even put a little bit of yellow up here. Okay, so there's my 3 warm colors. Now I'm going to take this little kitty cat picture, and this is drawn with a Sharpie. Now a Sharpie is a permanent marker, so that means the water is not going to affect it. So I'm going to get my little black outline here wet, and after it's wet, I can take it and I can put it on top of the ink any way that I choose, and I can rub it down. And what do you think is going to happen? That is correct. The ink will pull off of the foil and onto my drawing. You guys have a lot of fun with that this week. Oh, one thing real quickly I wanted to share with you. When I was getting my markers out to start this project, I had some dead markers. What do we do with dead markers? We save them for some reason. So Mrs. Heinzelman took the dead markers, and if you put an inch or 2 of water in a jar and just drop your dead marker down in there, it won't, just in a matter of seconds, it will start to pull the ink out. But if you leave the markers in here for 24, 48 hours, this concentration of pigment really starts to build up. So this is orange marker juice, and now this has turned into liquid watercolor paint. And so especially while we're home right now, you could have a test all the markers party and then put all your dead markers of light colors. This is violet, and I had probably 8 markers in this jar. So when the concentration of the water seemed really dark, I poured it into another jar and added a little more water, and it sat again for another 24 hours. So I was able to actually soak these markers twice to get this much pigment out. So as crazy as this sounds, look how vibrant and beautiful the colors are. So it's a great way to make your own art supplies. Marker juice, who knew? Anyway, I will see you guys next time. Enjoy your printmaking. I can't wait to see them.